Hello, Refuge Family. Happy New Year.
Whoop, whoop.
Very nice. What a nice New Year whoop whoop.
Yeah, I'm really good at those.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with that. So, coming to you guys live in your living room, and we just wanted to do just kind of a short family-style devotional here as we kick off the new year, and also wrap up a series. Some of you will know that for the last several weeks before Christmas, we were actually in a message series called "What is God Saying to You?" And over, 6-7 weeks, we heard from a lot of people here in our church. You heard from many different voices who basically answered the question of what is something that God specifically has been saying to you lately. And over that time, a lot of you turned in cards. You guys wrote cards on the back, what is God saying to you all? We shared those with you. So it wasn't just people who were teaching on stage that God was speaking to, but really he was speaking to our whole church. And we felt like it was appropriate to kind of just wrap that series up this year as we begin to look forward to the new year. So, Saoirse, as you think back to the last 6 or 7 weeks in this series, what is something that God has said to you specifically through these messages?
To me specifically, I feel like the thing that God has been just over the past couple months of my life continually saying to me and encouraging me with is that that there's a specific purpose for why he has me here and working at this church in the community of Spenard. I feel like that kind of does translate over to our church. I've felt that call personally, of just having doubts or whatever, and then the Lord just confirming that and be like, no, I've placed you here for a reason. And that's been something that he's been encouraging me with. And then I feel like also for our church, that's been something that as I've been praying over the church and things here, I just feel encouraged that there is something that the Lord has for us in this community. There's a purpose that he has for our church, for our people, to have impact and not just to be a church and just do the Sunday thing, and so I think that's kind of, and I don't there have been some things that have come up where it's oh yeah, that feels that's kind of that's the thing, that's why God is saying yeah, you're supposed to be here, or that's why God is saying yeah, this is why our church is supposed to be here. But mostly it's just been that encouragement of maybe you don't see it yet, or maybe it's not obvious, but there's purpose for this.
I love that, because one of the things that I remember during this series was something that you shared. I think you shared on stage one time, and it was something that God had said to somebody who came to one of our nights of worship. Mm-hmm. And it kind of had to do with that. Yes. Just kind of this reminder from sort of an outside voice that God has not forgotten us. Right? That God is still working here. God's still moving. And so that was one of the things when I think back to the series that stands out to me. I think another thing, thinking back over the messages, was just how many times when God speaks, what he says doesn't check the boxes of what makes sense. Yeah. And it's outside the realm of what we think, of what we think is normal or of what we think makes sense. And that really is just such a faith-building thing that if I'm going to listen to God and if I'm going to obey God, I have to, have faith that that's what he said. And so to me, that was just one of the biggest things was that reminder that when God speaks, it doesn't always, it doesn't always make sense.
I think that actually something that really stood out to me was, I think maybe it was after my sermon, but Brian said, as we did a little response time, and his kairos or his response to that was, we live in a culture that's we think about ourselves so much, and everything is very logical, and we're so saturated with our own wants and needs and comfortability that when we try to live as we should be, as Christians, giving our life away and honoring the Lord, it can feel very uncomfortable, or this does not make sense, or it goes so against our Western social constructs and what we've all are experiencing currently, and the cultural zeitgeist that we're all in. That's another thing that personally I've been talking through with with a lot of my friends, and just thinking about is Yeah, like I'm really called to like live differently. I'm not just like Christian and I love Jesus. Woo, I do love Jesus, but it's more than that. It's more than just like an identity that I get to slap on. Like I think everybody's doing that. Like this is part of who I am. Beep. But following Jesus is like a state of being. It's a way of being. It's a behavior. It's not just like an identifier. And I think that that's been something that's really been solidified in my mind over the past couple months, and like that I've felt like, a big theme has been like belief requires action. So.
And doesn't it make sense if we are required to live differently that we would hear a voice that calls us to do things that are different than the world around us?
Yeah.
Right? It would make sense that if that's how we're called, that's what God would speak and call us into. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really helpful that for us as a whole church, not just for Saoirse and myself, but to be thinking as we end the year, what Refuge Family is God saying to you? Like not just over the series, but think back over 2022. What is the message that God has said to you? What is something that if you were to say, you know what, this year I've heard God clearly in this. End this year thinking about that stuff. End last year thinking about that stuff. What is something that I know that God has said to me? And then, there are two questions we ask. What is God saying to you? But then the second one is, what are you going to do about it? Because just as Saoirse said, if we hear from God, it then does require action, right? We have to do something about it. And so I actually want to invite up Austin and Gwen, and they're going to kind of lead us through the what's next, the second side of that circle. What's God saying to you? And then what are you going to do about it? So Gwen, Austin, there you go.
Thank you, Adam and Saoirse. Happy New Year!
Whoop whoop.
And you raised up your janky hand.
Raised up my club, yes.
I'm really excited about the second kind of the follow up to this sermon series of what is God saying and what are you going to do about it, because this is where faith meets action, and faith without action is a dead faith. So we're going to anchor this next series in the book of Proverbs. And it's really interesting how the scripture is laid out. It starts Psalms first, and then we go into Proverbs, which is all about Christian conduct, or what do we do? How do we then live if this is what God is telling us through the book of Proverbs? Through the book of Psalms. Like Psalms is so much about God speaking to us, and Proverbs is so much about our conduct as a result of what he says. And so I just want to ask you, Austin, we're going to share the sermon this next week and really dig into what is God saying to us and what are we going to do about it through the book of Proverbs. But I just want to ask you, it's been a crazy season of healing, a lot of surgeries. You had your biggest surgery right before Christmas. So what has God been saying to you in this time?
Yeah. It has been the strangest season of life for me that I've ever been through. And first, before we get into that question, which I'm going to answer, don't worry, we'll get there. I just want to say, church, I miss you guys. I genuinely miss you guys. And it's been 3 months of 5 surgeries and lots of doctor's appointments. And it's just been very hard for me and my family. And I am so thankful and unbelievably grateful to both Saoirse and Adam and my mom and the team here for just picking up and carrying things while I've been gone and giving me a chance to rest and recuperate without feeling like I still have to carry responsibility here. That's not normal for church. And I'm just so proud of our church and the way it's just the health that seems to be thriving here. And being able to watch online from my house laid up on the couch and just seeing just a beautiful community still thriving here has been so encouraging to me. So I'm very excited to be coming back. It's kind of weird for me to be coming back. I don't really know what that looks like because I'm still injured and the road forward is still a little bit murky. But I really miss you guys, and I'm excited to be around more and be engaged more. And I'm looking forward to this next month, this next season. So anyway, to answer the question, for the better part of my entire adult life, professional ministry, for lack of a better term, has been at the center of that. And I've been following Jesus for a long time, but a lot of that's been wrapped up in doing ministry as a job. And, I've taken breaks here and there, a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, but I've never really taken there's never been a time in my life where I've had an extended period where ministry hasn't been at the center of what I do day in and day out. And sitting at home between surgeries for 3 months now, it's been the first time in my life where my relationship with Jesus hasn't been wrapped up in a job. And I didn't realize how intertwined those two things were and how inseparable those had become over the last decade. And so for the first time in my life, actually, those two things have started to pull apart. And I've started to see this gap form between work and ministry and relationship with Jesus as two separate things, not as one thing. Not that that's been really bad before, but it's been hard for me to view my relationship with Jesus as something that doesn't come with a task to complete, or a song to lead, or a sermon to preach, or a class to teach, or whatever, fill in the blank. And I think what God's been saying to me over the last 3 months is, even though you're not doing ministry, even though you're not doing church work, I'm still here with you. You don't have to earn my presence. I'm still here, even though you're unable to do what you feel like you need to do. I think there's been a part of me at the core that maybe I couldn't admit before, couldn't see before, that where I felt like what I did really did form or create my relationship with Jesus. That my faith was a lot of the times built on my ability to perform a task. And I was pretty scared to think of taking time off. I didn't know what that would do to me or do to my faith. And there was many days I was sitting on my couch just begging God, please speak to me. I need an answer. I need a timeline. I need you to make me a promise. And all that God has said to me is, I'm still here. And that was frustrating to some degree because I want answers. I want like a schedule. I want to know when I can be back to normal. I know He said He's going to heal my hand. I want to know when that's going to be. But in my hours of just downtime sitting at home on drugs, a lot of the time, God has just whispered in my ear time and time again, I'm still here. That's all I've heard.
There's something pretty powerful about trust when we hear what Jesus is saying, that hearing Him and not just the answers He gives, that we're trusting Jesus, not the answers He provides. I think there's something so powerful about that. We're really excited to dig into, we're going to hear a lot more about your journey next week as we really look at, okay, that's what God's been saying to me. I'm still here. What do I do about that? What is the response to Jesus just saying, I'm still here? And we're going to unpack that next week as we dig into the Proverbs and, really dig into that second half of the question, which, of course, moves us into life change. And so I'm really excited about that. We have a project for you, family, that we want you to join us on in this journey. There are 31 chapters to the book of Proverbs. There are 30 days there are 31 days in January. Yeah. So I want you to read a chapter a day for the whole month of January of Proverbs, and just get into that book. Do that journey with us. It'll make the whole series come alive to you more if you're in the Word. Honestly, if you want to hear what God is saying, it starts with knowing His voice, and we do that by getting in the Word of God. There are a lot of other ways that God speaks, but that's foundational. So if you would join us on that journey, starting today, Proverbs chapter 1, and digging into that, and we will see you next week. Family, thanks for being on this journey with us. Have the best day ever. Let's do this. 2023.
Yeah. I'm just going to say one more thing. I just feel a little bit compelled to say this. So, funny story. On Christmas Eve, Saoirse brought a group of young adults up to my house to shovel my deck because obviously I'm unable to shovel and Grace is busy with kids and work. And so she came up to shovel, and I sit on the couch watching all these people help me do something I should be able to do. And I realized how uncomfortable I was in that situation. And I have realized over the last 3 months, I am terrible at asking for help, at letting people help. And so I just feel like I need to ask my church family once again, will you please continue to pray for me in this season? I still have a long ways to go, and I really need your prayer, and I need my church family. So would you mind just praying for me and my hand and the next surgeries to come? I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. I know this family has been so faithful to be walking with you and praying and serving you in the middle of this. You've also been incredibly faithful just giving to our family. And what a great evening. We had Christmas Eve just being together and being family together. I'm looking forward to a new year with you.
Thanks, guys. Love you.